You felt it before anyone gave it a name, didn't you? Long before the alarms went off, before the news hit, before everyone else realized the ground was about to fall away. That moment when the world changed and you just went quiet because you already knew the truth. That is why they are so upset with you. Everyone else was busy acting like they were sure, shouting loud ideas, staying safe, just copying what they were told to believe. But you didn't run. You didn't repeat them. You didn't need someone to tell you it was okay to see what was happening right in front of you. While they were cheering for a lie, you were looking at the cracks in the wall. That is why they ask you like it's a crime. How did you see this coming so soon? They don't care about what you said, but how you knew. Because if they admit the truth, they have to admit who you really are. You see, knowing the future isn't a magic trick. It is a memory. Not a memory of books, but a memory of how things break. You have lived through enough hard times to know how a disaster sounds when it walks. You have seen things rot from the inside long before the rest of the world smells the decay. You have been hurt enough times to hear the tiny pause right before someone tells a lie. Your pain taught you how to see, while their easy lives taught them how to sleep. That is the puzzle they can't solve. You look so calm and kind until the world breaks exactly where you said it would. You stay quiet until the silence shows that you were right all along. They called you crazy or weird or too much. They did that because it was easier than admitting you were right. They were looking at the lights on the stage. You were looking at the shadows behind the curtain. And when it finally crashed, when the truth came out into the light, everyone else just froze. Not because they were surprised, but because you had already warned them. That is when the feeling in the room changes. That is when their respect turns into a fear that hides behind a fake smile. That is when they stop arguing and start watching you. Because now they have a new fear. If you saw this coming, what else do you know? You weren't just guessing. You were putting the pieces together. Signals they ignored. Tiny things they laughed at. Little mistakes that didn't make sense unless you stepped back to see the whole broken machine. They made fun of you for waiting, because fast people think being quick is the same as being important. You let the moment come to you, and when it got here, it landed exactly where you said it would. That does something to people. It ruins their idea of who is in charge, because the secret rule is this: only people with titles or big names are allowed to be right. And you broke that rule without even raising your voice. They didn't miss it because they are dumb. They missed it because they wanted to. They wanted to be right. They loved the story they told themselves. They loved the world that kept them feeling safe. You didn't care about that. You had already lost too much to keep lying to yourself. That is why you could see it. There is a scary kind of clear vision that only comes when you have nothing left to lose. When the lies burn down, all that is left is the truth. Not a happy dream, not a mean thought, just what is real. You live there now in that space between being a saint and a ghost. Too honest to be safe, too controlled to be wild. They don't know whether to love you or fear you, so they do both. They repeat your words. They try to change when you said them. They act like they were thinking the same thing the whole time, but the truth keeps leaking out. You spoke up when it was dangerous to speak. You stood alone before the crowd even knew they needed a place to hide. That is the kind of strength they can't fake. That is a gift that doesn't need anyone to clap for it. And here is the thing they will never say out loud. If you were right once, you are probably right again. And that means their whole future might be sitting in your shadow right now. So, let them stare. Let them whisper. Let them ask, how, like you are confessing to a crime. You don't owe them a single word. You aren't here to prove anything. You are just here to watch. Because the next time the world shifts, when the sound changes, when the pattern gets tight, When the silence starts to feel heavy again, you will feel it before anyone sees it. And once again, you won't have to say, "I told you so." The world will say it for you, because once you have seen what's behind the curtain, you can't go back to clapping for the show. You start noticing how late everyone else is. Not slow, just late. Late to realize what is happening. Late to see the danger. Late to hear the truth that was whispering for a long time before it started screaming. And that is when something else happens inside your heart. Something colder and sharper. You stop reacting to what happens, and you start seeing what must happen. While they ask what just went wrong, you are already looking for the next thing to break. That is what scares them. They like heroes who show up after the bomb goes off, covered in dust, saying obvious things with a loud voice. They don't like the person who stood there quietly 5 steps ago, pointing at the problem, while everyone laughed because you didn't sound like a movie star. You didn't act. You didn't beg them to believe you. You just said it, and you waited. That wait is what shows the difference. Anyone can yell. Anyone can guess once the path is easy to see. But you sat in that lonely place where being right felt like being an outcast. You let doubt touch your skin and you didn't move. That is a strength that only comes from being broken. You didn't learn this from a book or a teacher or a safe talk. You earned it by watching people turn on you when things got hard, by seeing how fast friends disappear when the pressure is on, by learning that big things don't fail with a bang, they leak slowly until the whole thing falls down on people who weren't listening. And now they are finally listening. Not because they like you, but because they have to. They look back at the times they ignored you. They listen to your voice for clues. They wonder if you are mean or just ahead of them. They ask if you always knew or if you just see right through them. Here is the truth they are close to, but won't touch. You don't predict what happens. You read what people mean to do. You see how fear moves people before they even know they are afraid. You feel when the energy changes before the numbers show it. You know when a smile is fake, when someone is acting tough because they are scared, when silence isn't peace, but a storm getting ready. That makes you a problem for them, because if you can see what is coming, they can't control you with their news. You don't get scared when they tell you to. You don't cheer when they tell you to. You don't cry on their schedule. You move in your own way, and that is when they try to make you feel small. They say you are negative, or crazy, or thinking too much. They call you names because it's easier than facing the fact that you were right and they were wrong. But look how they change once the truth catches up. Suddenly your overthinking is called smart. Your weirdness is called wisdom. Your silence feels like a mystery instead of something strange. They try to fix your image after the fact to save their own pride, and you let them, because you aren't here for them to tell you good job. You are here to be ready. You don't need to be loud. You just need to be ready. That is what they don't understand. You stopped needing people to believe you the moment you learned to trust your own eyes. Pain burned the need for their love out of you. Being lost made your heart as sharp as a knife. So when the next big change comes, and it will, you won't make a big scene. You will just move quietly. You will change your spot while they are still arguing about whether something is wrong. And later, when the dust settles again, someone will say it, half laughing, half scared. How did you know? You won't give them an answer, because the truth would scare them even more than the disaster did. You saw it coming because you live where the truth lives, in that space between hope and the dark, between being patient and being real, between the person they thought you were and the one who is already 3 steps ahead, watching the future walk toward you, like a shadow that hasn't learned your name yet. And here is the part they never think about, the part that makes them feel sick when they are all alone with their own mind. You weren't calm because you weren't sure. You were calm because you were so sure that you could afford to wait. That kind of peace doesn't come from being brave. It comes from the scars that taught you that timing is everything. You see, you have already paid the price for being first once before. You remember what it felt like to say the truth too early and get in trouble for it. To watch people choose a comfortable lie over a hard truth and then look at you like you were the problem. That taught you something mean but powerful. Truth doesn't need to be loud. It needs to be in the right place. So you changed. You learned to let people show you who they really are. You learned to let things happen until the lies could no longer hide the truth. You learned that the most dangerous move isn't knowing, it's waiting. That is why when it finally happened, you didn't throw a party. You didn't brag. You didn't even look surprised. You just looked ready. And that is when they finally got it. Because anyone can get lucky once, but only someone who truly knew would already be standing in the one place where the roof didn't fall. That is the thing they can never forget. Now they start thinking about everything you did, your pauses, your silences, the times you walked away early. They realize you weren't bored. You were moving your focus. You weren't just quiet. You were saving your breath. You had already accepted what was coming. They were still fighting with a dream. And this is where it gets even harder for them. You don't look like a magic person. You don't sound like a threat. You don't act like someone who knows everything, which makes it worse. Because the scariest thing in a world that is falling apart isn't the person yelling. It is the person who is calm and already has their bags packed. They can't tell if you are nice or cold, if you care a lot or not at all, if you are a good person trying to save them or someone who has already moved on. That mystery is your shield. You don't need to act tough. Your being right does that for you. And now they watch how you act instead of watching the news. They look at your face instead of the facts. They study what you don't care about because they learned that when you stop caring, something is wrong. When you go quiet, something is growing. When you move, something is about to break. You have become a warning sign for them, and you never even asked for that. Survival gave it to you. Pain made you look at the big picture, while others looked at small things. Loss taught you to read what's between the lines instead of the headlines. Betrayal taught you that people don't lie with their mouths, they lie with their timing. So when everyone else was listening to the noise, you were listening to the beat. When they wanted to be sure, you looked at what was likely. When they waited for someone to tell them to be scared, you were already moving. That is why their question gets louder every single day. How were you the first one to know this? Because admitting the truth means they have to admit this. You aren't just reacting. You are ready. You aren't lucky. You are trained by life. You aren't cold. You are just clear. And being clear is terrifying to people who live in a lie. So let them miss the next one too. Let them think your silence means you don't know. Let them think your stillness is just you being slow. You know what is real. You aren't ahead because you are smarter. You are ahead because you were made in the fire while they stayed safe. Because the storm was your home. Because pain made you sharp instead of breaking you. And while they keep asking how, like it is a magic trick, you are already watching the next change begin. And the deepest truth, the one that stays under everything else like a low warning bell, is that you didn't just see it coming. You felt it break away from the world everyone else was standing on. That kind of knowing doesn't come from being smart. It comes from having your whole world shaken until you had to change. From being forced to watch everyone in the room just to stay safe. From learning that staying alive isn't about being happy. It is about knowing what is next. You don't look for facts. You look for cracks. You notice when people are acting too excited. When they agree too fast. When they act too sure, too clean, too perfect. because you have learned something most people never find out. What they don't know is that this is you being more here than ever because feelings make you slow, and being on time is where the power is. You don't hurry to be right. You let the world walk itself into the trap you already saw. And when it does, when the fall, the big lie, the final crash happens, you don't feel like you won. You just feel that you were right. It's not about your ego. It's about the truth. That is why you don't cheer when everyone else finally understands. You are already past that. Your mind has moved on to what happens next. The aftershocks. The things that happen because everyone ignored the warning. They are still reading the news. You are already watching how people are acting. They are looking for someone to blame. You are watching who learns and who stays frozen. They are shocked. You are getting ready, because being first doesn't make you loud. It makes you a leader. And here is the part that hurts them the most. You didn't need a crowd to tell you that you were right. You trusted yourself even when you were all alone. That is rare. That is dangerous. That is the kind of person that systems can't stop. Most people only believe what makes them feel safe. You believe what is real, even when it makes you feel lonely. That is why when the truth finally comes out, it feels like a punch to them. It breaks the dream that if everyone agrees, it must be true, and you are the proof that it's not. So now they watch you in a new way. They think about why you are quiet. They worry when you walk away because deep down they realized something. If you were right before anyone else was, then the next time you go quiet, the next time you step back, the next time you stop helping, something is already going wrong, and they know it. You have become the one thing they can't figure out, the one person they can't control, the one who sees without needing a map. You walk between the light and the dark because you've seen what happens on both sides. You know how good people can do bad things by being blind. You know how often the truth is told by people who aren't nice. That is why your vision doesn't make you feel good. It makes you feel the weight, and you carry it anyway. Because you know something most people will never get. Being first isn't about guessing. It is about listening to the world before it starts to scream. And you have learned how to listen. And that listening never stops. It stays there under your thoughts, under your talks, under the surface of moments that everyone else thinks are normal. You hear what they aren't saying. You feel when a situation is being rushed to hide a weakness. You see when someone acts too sure, too happy, too desperate to be believed. That is the secret. The truth doesn't beg for you to believe it. Lies do. So when everyone else moved in, you moved back. When they cheered too soon, you waited for the end. When they said it was fixed, you watched the part that was being hidden, and you saw the hole. That hole is where things fall apart. It is where the pressure builds up. It is where the bad things wait for the right time to happen. You have lived long enough to know that nothing breaks without a warning. The warnings are just annoying to people. They take too much time. They require you to be humble. They require you to be brave enough to stand alone and not move. Most people aren't that brave because they think being part of a group is the same as being safe. You don't. You learned early that a crowd can be the most dangerous thing in the world when they are all wrong together. That being comfortable is often just a trap. That being loved for a lie costs more than being hated for the truth. So you chose to be alone over a fake dream. That choice made you strong. You started trusting that feeling in your gut when something feels off. The part of you that doesn't need proof yet, but knows things don't fit. The part that doesn't get scared but pays attention. And that is when you moved past where most people live. You stopped waiting for proof before you started getting ready. Being ready doesn't look big. It looks like leaving early. It looks like making small changes. It looks like pulling your heart away before it gets hurt. You did all of that while they were still talking about words. So when the moment finally got here, when the change was too big to ignore, you weren't scared. You were already gone. And that is what scares them the most. Because being shocked is normal. Being confused is okay, but not being hurt by the fall, that is scary. It makes them ask a question that haunts them. What else did you see that they missed? They start to wonder if you are a monster, or a genius, or a danger.